I pay my electricity bill by counting single-dollar bills stuffed into a glass jar. The jar smells like old whiskey and desperation. This is my life. I am Ava Romano. By day, I am a freelance translator. I argue over email about the precise meaning of a dependent clause in a legal document for maybe $50. By night, I am a lounge singer in Little Italy. I sing songs that were old when my grandmother was young. Tonight, the rain is not just falling, it is attacking the city. It hammers the windows of Sal's place. It smells like wet pavement and the sour edge of old garbage from the alley. I am backstage. This is not a real backstage. It is a storage closet that smells like stale beer, spilled wine, and the cheap perfume of the waitress who uses it to cry in. My heart is pounding against my ribs. It is a stupid rhythm, too fast. Out of sync with the piano bleeding through the wall. I'm trying to calm it. I'm trying to find my key. I close my eyes. I start to hum. It is a very old tune. A Neapolitan melody my nonna used to sing while she rolled gnocchi. It is just a quiet sound in my throat, a vibration to keep the panic from swallowing me whole. The front door of the club bursts open. It slams against the wall. The sound cuts through the piano. It is not just the cold October air that floods the room. The pressure changes. It is a physical weight, like an elevator dropping 20 floors. I stop humming. My throat closes. I peek through the heavy velvet curtain, the one that smells like dust and 100 years of cigarette smoke. It is him, Luca Vassallo. I have never seen him in person, only in blurry photos on the internet, photos that vanish. He's the new boss of the Vassallo family. He's young, too young for the silence that follows him. He's flanked by two men. They are mountains in expensive, damp suits. They smell like wet wool in the cold, unmistakable odor of damp metal, the kind of metal that lives in a holster. Luca stops. He does not look at the bar. He does not scan the pathetic crowd. He stops right inside the door and his head turns. He looks directly toward the curtain where I am hiding. He tilts his head. The melody. He heard it. He heard me. I am certain I stopped breathing, but the echo of the tune must have hung in the air. His eyes, dark in the dim light, go darker. They look empty and full at the same time. He looks like he is not seeing Sal's dimly lit bar. He is seeing a ghost. He moves one step closer to my hiding place. He whispers something. The club is so quiet I hear it. Every person hears it. That melody, only my mother knew it. Dead silence. The entire club is a photograph. The customers are statues, afraid to lift their drinks. Even the kids rattling pans in the kitchen went quiet. Sal, the bartender, a man who has seen fistfights and police raids. He reaches over with a shaking hand. He turns down the volume of the background music until it is gone. There is no sound now except the rain hammering the windows and my own blood, which is a screaming siren in my ears. I make a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. I let the curtain fall back an inch and I look directly at him. I meet his gaze. It is not like looking at a man. It is like finding a secret that is alive and breathing and has teeth. He does not break the stare. He walks toward me. He moves with a liquid grace that does not belong with his size. He's not walking to the stage. He is walking to my closet. He stops 5 feet away. His guards shift. One blocks the exit to the street. The other blocks the path to the bar. I am boxed in. He speaks to me. His voice is low, a gravelly vibration that I feel in my chest. You. The singer. He does not ask my name. Where did you learn that song? I cannot speak. My tongue is stone. I just shake my head. He continues, his eyes scanning my face, my cheap dress, my worn-out shoes. They say you speak the old language, the dialects, not just the clean Italian they teach in schools. I manage a nod. It is a jerky movement. I have a job for you. It is not singing. He pauses. I have journals. My mother's. They are old. They are written in Italian. I need them translated. More than that, I need them interpreted. I need to know what she meant. He names a price. He says a number. It is not a salary. It is a miracle. It is a rescue number. It is the exact amount, down to the last 1,000, that would pull me out of the deep, dark, drowning hole of my grandmother's medical debts. It is enough to let me breathe for the first time in 3 years. My throat is sandpaper. I finally find my voice. It sounds small, pathetic. I am just a translator. I read contracts. I read letters. He smiles. It is not a smile. It is the pulling back of his lips. You are a translator who knows my mother's song. That makes you the only translator I want. He holds out a hand. One of his men steps forward, gives him something. He offers it to me. My car will take you home. We will discuss the details. I look at the black sedan idling at the curb. It is long and dark and looks like a coffin on wheels. Its lights cut the rain into silver knives. I look at him. No. The word is out before I can stop it. It sounds too loud in the quiet room. I do not take rides from strangers. I will take the subway. It is a stupid thing to say. A dangerous, childish thing to say to a man like him. It is the first boundary. It is the only weapon I have. His eyes narrow. I expect him to yell. I expect his men to grab me. He does not get angry. He just watches me for a long second. Then he nods, a slow, deliberate motion. As you wish. He reaches into the inner pocket of his perfect jacket. He pulls out a single card. It is thick, cream-colored, heavy, like porcelain. He presses it into my hand. His fingers are warm. My hand is freezing. My private number. Call me tomorrow at 9. I look down at the embossed name. Luca Vassalo. No title. It does not need one. It feels less like a business card and more like a draft notice for a war. Sal is waving frantically from the bar. His face is pale. He is pointing at the microphone. It is time for my last set, my encore. I have to walk past Luca Vassalo to get to the stage. I feel the static electricity coming off him. I smell the rain on his coat. I get to the stage. The piano player starts. His hands are trembling so badly he hits a wrong note. I sing. It is a simple ballad about lost love. I do not know where the voice comes from. It is clear. It does not shake. But I feel his eyes on me. He has taken a table in the darkest corner, the one reserved for Sal's bookie. He does not drink. He does not speak to his men. He just watches me. Every note I sing feels like it is being weighed, inspected. The final note of the song hangs in the smoky air. It feels final. It feels like a signal. The sound of a heavy, ancient lock clicking open. The past is not just knocking. It is breaking down the door. I step off the stage. The applause is thin, nervous. Everyone just wants to go home. Everyone wants him to leave. I gather my thin coat from the back room. My hands are shaking now. I have to walk past his table to leave. I keep my eyes on the floor. I try to be invisible. Just a girl going home. He speaks. His voice cuts through the room. So, Miss Romano, my offer. I pause. I cannot help it. I look at him. I will think about it. He leans forward. The single candle on his table catches the hard lines of his jaw, the shadow of his eyelashes. No. His voice is soft. It is not a request. It is an absolute command. You will not think. You will come here, and you will let me hear that melody one more time, the one you were humming. My heart did not just stop. It fell. It plummeted into the cold, dark pit of my stomach. The air in Sal's club was thick, unbreathable. Every eye was on me, but they did not matter. Only his eyes mattered. Luca Vassalo, the man who held the entire neighborhood in the palm of his hand, had just given me a command, not a request, a command. I felt my feet move, one step, then another. My cheap heels scuffed on the worn wooden floor. I walked from the dusty stage to his corner table. His 2 guards watched me. They did not blink. I felt like a lamb walking into a very civilized, very expensive cage. I stopped at the edge of his table. The candle flame was the only thing that moved. "Here," I whispered. He did not answer. He just watched me. His gaze was heavy, an interrogation. I closed my eyes. I was shaking. I tried to find the note, the one my grandmother used to hum. I tried to block out the smell of his cologne, the wet wool of his guards, the fear. I opened my mouth. It was dry. I hummed. It was just a breath of air, a few notes of the melody, the strange, archaic bridge. The sound was tiny in the absolute silence of the room. It felt too intimate, too private. I was giving him a piece of my past, a piece of my Nona, a piece of that small church in New Jersey. When I hummed the last note of the phrase, he closed his own eyes. It was just for a second, a flicker of his eyelashes against his cheekbone. But in that second, he was not a mafia boss. He was somewhere else. He was in a different time, listening to a different voice. He opened his eyes. The ghost was gone. The boss was back. 9 o'clock. My car will be outside your apartment. He said it without emotion. I told you, I take the subway. Not anymore. He stood up. He did not look at me again. He placed a few large bills on the table. Far too much for the drink he never touched. His guards moved with him. A perfect silent machine. The pressure in the room shifted. The door opened. The cold rain swept in. He was gone. The entire club let out a breath it had been holding for 10 minutes. The piano player immediately started a loud, cheerful ragtime tune. It sounded obscene. I went home. I took the subway. The card in my pocket felt heavy, like a stone. I did not sleep. How could I? That melody was not just a song. It was my other native language. I grew up in Queens, in a tiny apartment above my Nona's sandwich shop, Romano's Deli. We were not rich. We were not even comfortable. We were survivors. My childhood did not smell like playgrounds and new toys. It smelled like warm bread, sharp provolone, and basil. My grandmother always had pots of basil in every window. She said it was the smell of home. She taught me Italian, not the clean, perfect language of textbooks, but the fast, passionate dialect of her village. It was the language of lullabies, of arguments, of recipes. I was supposed to be the one who got out. I got into music school. I was studying composition and linguistics. I was going to write symphonies, or maybe become a high-level diplomatic translator. I was going to be someone. Then the world shut down. The pandemic came. It took my Nona's health. It did not kill her, but it left her frail, and it left me with a mountain of medical debt, a mountain so high I could not see the sun. So I dropped out. I came back to Queens. I took freelance jobs translating boring legal papers. And at night, I sang in places like Sal's, counting $1 bills to keep the lights on. I sell my subtlety by the hour. But the song, that song was different. I did not learn it from my Nona. She knew it, but she never sang it. She would cross herself when she heard it. I learned it at a small, crumbling Catholic church in New Jersey. She used to volunteer there, a nun. Sister Lucia taught it to me. She was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles. She taught it to me while we polished candlesticks. She said it was a song of the fields from her home in the mountains. She said it was a rare dialect variation, a tune that was never written down in any book. It was passed from mother to daughter. A secret. Living in New York, you learn the maps that are not on the subway wall. You learn the invisible borders. This street belongs to this family. That restaurant is a meeting place. You know which cops look away. You know which business owners pay for protection. The families are a part of the city's geography. You live around them. You respect them. And you never, ever get involved. Now, I was involved. At 7 in the morning, I called Maya. She's my best friend, my only friend. She's an emergency room nurse. She's my moral compass, my tether to the real world. Her voice was thick with sleep. Ava, please tell me you are not calling from jail. I'm not in jail. I have a problem. I told her everything. The club, the man, Luca Vasallo, the melody, the job offer, the money. There was a long silence on the line. I heard her sit up in bed. No, Absolutely not. Are you out of your mind, Ava? You do not work for those people. They are not clients. They are the reason I treat men with gunshot wounds at 3 in the morning. You stay away from him. Maya, the money, it is enough. It is enough to pay it all off. I do not care, she said, her voice sharp. I will pick up extra shifts. You will sing at weddings. We will figure it out. You will not, under any circumstances, get into a car with that man. He is a killer. He just wants me to read his mother's diaries. That is how it starts, Ava. They seem sad. They seem human. They use that. You call him and you tell him no. She was right. I knew she was right. Maya is the most fearless person I know. She once honked her horn at a black Escalade that cut her off in traffic. A car I knew belonged to the Vassallo family. She is stubbornly, terrifyingly normal. I hung up. I looked at the red-stamped final notice on my kitchen table. I looked at the heavy, cream-colored card. At 5 minutes to 9, I went downstairs. The black sedan was there. It was as long and dark as a hearse. A man got out of the driver's side. He did not open the door for me. He just stood there. I took a breath. I walked to the car. I opened my own door. He did not take me to a social club in Little Italy. The address was a steel and glass tower in Midtown. The sign in the lobby said Vassallo Global Imports. It looked sterile, legal. Luca Vassallo was waiting for me in the lobby. He was not wearing the dark, imposing suit from last night. He was wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked almost normal. He looked tired. We are not working here, he said. He led me out of the building and around the corner to a small, crowded coffee shop. We sat at a tiny table by the window. He placed a box on the table. It was not a briefcase. It was an old leather box, the color of dark wine, its corners worn and scarred. He unfastened the brass clasp. This is her, he said. It was not just journals. It was a life. It was a whole symphony of the past. There were letters tied with faded ribbon, the ink blurred and brown. There were Polaroid photographs, the colors washed out, a beautiful woman with his eyes, laughing on a beach. There were old receipts, dried flowers, a child's drawing. I can hire anyone to translate the words. Miss Romano, he said. His voice was quiet. The cafe sounds, the steam wand hissing, the chatter of customers seemed to bend around us. I need more than that. I need to know why she wrote this word instead of that one. I need to know what she was feeling. I need you to interpret. I looked at the box. I thought of Maya. I thought of the debt. This was my job. I sell subtlety. This was the biggest sale of my life. I will try, I said. 2 hours for a trial, and I have conditions. His dark eyes met mine. He did not look surprised. He just waited. I do not just translate the words. I translate the culture. I explain the context. You cannot rush me, and we work here in public for now. I expected him to argue. He just nodded slowly. That is fine. I am paying you for how you hear. He reached into the box. He pulled out a single, fragile letter. He slid it across the table. I picked it up. The paper was thick, expensive. I unfolded it. The handwriting was beautiful. It was not just writing. It was art. It flowed like music. I read it silently first. It was a letter to a friend. It was about gardening, about the price of tomatoes. It was about a dress she was sewing for a party. It was simple. It was domestic. But the words she used, the warmth in them. I started to read aloud to him. I translated as I went. She does not say, I am cooking dinner. She says, I am making the kitchen sing with the smell of garlic and rosemary. She does not say, I am sad. She says, the house is quiet without your laughter. My voice found a rhythm, a soft storytelling cadence. I was breathing life back into this woman, Elena Vassallo. I was giving her a voice in a crowded coffee shop, decades after she was gone. I read the last line, Be well, my love. The world is cold, but we must keep our own fires burning. I finished. I looked up. Luca Vassallo was not looking at me. He was staring at the letter in my hand. His jaw was a hard line. His shoulders were tense. He was not the boss of the Vasello family. He was just a boy listening to his mother's voice. The air from the street was cold, but for the first time in a very long time, I did not feel the chill. He snapped out of his memory so fast it was like a physical jolt. The boy in the coffee shop vanished, and the boss returned. All hard lines and cold assessment. He pushed another letter across the table, his fingers tapping an impatient rhythm on the wood. "This one, he said. I picked it up. The handwriting was the same. That beautiful, flowing script. But the tone was different. The warmth was gone. This was not a letter about tomatoes. This was business." I translated slowly, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. She was writing about a disagreement, a dispute over territory. She mentioned the cousins from the mountains, and the phrase was cold. "They only listen to noise," I read aloud, translating the dense dialect. "They only understand the sound of the gun. But I have reminded them. I made a promise by melody. As long as the tune is respected, the blood stays off the pavement." I looked up from the page. A promise by melody. Luca's eyes were locked on the paper, as if he could see his mother's face in the ink. "A truce," he said, his voice a low growl. One my father never respected. He thought it was weak. I went back to the letter. I was a translator, a musician. I look at language the way I look at a score. I look for the structure, the key signature, the tempo, and I saw it. It was not just beautiful handwriting, it was notation. Above certain words, the script changed. Over the word for payment, she had drawn a tiny, sharp dot, a staccato mark. Over the phrase, "our agreement," she used a long, flowing slur, connecting the words like a legato phrase. My breath caught. "Mr. Vasallo," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the cafe. "This is not just a diary." He looked up. His focus was absolute. "She was a musician." I said. "She played the piano," he answered. "No, she was more than that. She's using musical notation, rhythmic symbols. This is not just a phrase. It is a system. Look, a dotted eighth note here, above the name, a caesura, a full stop. Right before she mentions the date, she's not just writing words. She's writing a score." Luca's face hardened. He looked around the coffee shop, at the barista, at the students with their laptops. He was suddenly dangerously aware of our audience. He threw a $50 bill on the table and stood up. "We are leaving." This time, I did not argue about the subway. I did not mention my boundaries. I followed him out into the cold air and got into the black sedan. The ride was silent. We went back to the glass tower in Midtown. We went up in a silent elevator to his office. It was vast, overlooking the city, but it felt like a vault. It was soundproof. I heard the heavy click of the door as he locked it. He turned to face me. The tired man from the coffee shop was gone. "My mother was murdered," he said. The words were flat, devoid of all emotion. I was 15 years old. It was 2 weeks after that letter was written. They said it was a botched robbery. That was a lie. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was not a translation job. This was a confession. "They never found the person who organized it," he continued, walking to the window. He looked down at the city lights. "The man who pulled the trigger was found in the river a week later, but not the man who paid him. I believe it was someone inside my father's organization, a traitor, someone who wanted the truce to fail." He turned back to me. His eyes were black holes. "That melody you were humming, that was her song, the truce song. Her murder broke the truce. It started a war that lasted 10 years. I need to know who broke it, and I need to know why." The air in the room was thin. I was a freelance translator. I argued about invoices. I was now in a locked room with the most powerful Mafia boss in New York, discussing a decades-old murder. I needed air. I needed a moment to think. I nodded, a jerky, mechanical motion. I need a glass of water." He gestured to a small, hidden bar in the corner. "Help yourself." I walked out of the main office into the reception area. His 2 guards were there. The mountains in suits. They were talking, their voices low. They did not stop when they saw me. I was just the help. I froze. They were not speaking Sicilian. It was not the dialect I heard in Sal's club or in my nonna's kitchen. It was Calabrese. It was thick, guttural. The dialect of the 'Ndrangheta, the sound of the cousins from the mountains, the men Elena had written about. The smell of danger was so strong it was physical. It was like smelling burnt pizza. You recognize the smell instantly. It means something has gone terribly wrong, and you are probably too late to fix it. The danger was not in the past. It was not in a cold case file. It was right here. It was in his lobby. It was guarding his door. I turned around. I did not get the water. I walked back into the office. Luca was watching me. He had seen the look on my face. "You need these done, Yar," he said. "All of them. Fast." I shook my head. The fear was making me sharp. It was making me brave. "No, not fast. Right." "What do you mean?" "I need all of them," I said. My voice was steady. "Not just the letters you think are important, not the ones your men choose for me. I need the whole box, the receipts, the photographs, the letters about tomatoes, everything." He raised an eyebrow. "You do not trust my judgment." "I trust my process." I said, "A translator cannot work with selected data. A musician cannot play half a score. The answer is not just in the business letters. It is in the rhythm. It is in the patterns. I need everything, or I cannot find it. Or I walk away right now." He stared at me. It was a long, silent, assessing look. I was a girl who counted single-dollar bills, and I was giving an ultimatum to Luca Veselo. "You are demanding," he said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "I am expensive," I replied, "and I am the only one who knows the song." A slow nod. "All right, everything. The entire box is yours." He extended his hand. "We have a deal." I shook it. His grip was warm and firm. It was a contract signed with a high stakes. Dangerous look. I could not just disappear into his world. I still had bills to pay. I still had a life. That night, I went to Sal's to sing. I needed the tip money. The routine felt normal, sane. I was halfway through my first set, singing about a broken heart in Venice. A new customer sat at the bar. He did not fit. His suit was cheap polyester. His shoes were brown and sensible. He was drinking a domestic beer, watching me in the mirror behind the bar. When I stepped down for my break, he turned on his stool. "That was beautiful," he said. His smile was all teeth. "You sing here often." I gave him my polite, professional smile. "A few nights a week." "Must see a lot of interesting people in a place like this," he said, too casually. "Big shots. Ever see a guy named Luca Vesalo around here?" The blood in my veins turned to ice water. My smile did not flicker. "I just sing the songs, mister," I said, my voice light. "I do not check identification at the door. I would not know him if he walked in." It was a lie, but it was a precise, forensically accurate lie. I had not known him by sight when he walked in. The man nodded, his smile thinning. He knew I was lying. I knew he was a cop. I finished my last set and practically ran to the subway. The train car was almost empty. It was late, after 1 a.m. The fluorescent lights hummed. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a message from an unknown number. There was no text, just an image. My heart stopped. It was a photograph of me, sitting on the subway. Right now, it was taken from the other end of the car. My hair was damp from the rain. I looked tired. I looked scared. I looked up. The car was empty, except for one man sleeping at the far end, covered in newspapers. Whoever took the picture was already gone. They must have gotten off at the last stop. My phone vibrated again, a second message. This one had words. "Stop singing that song. It calls the wolves." I was shaking so hard I could not breathe. I was not just compromised. I was located. I was targeted. I did not go home. I got off at the next stop, ran up the stairs, and hailed a taxi. My hands trembled as I gave the driver the address of the Midtown Tower. I used the heavy, cream-colored card to get past the night security. He was still there, and he was in his office. The leather box was open on his desk, its contents spread out under a bright lamp. He looked up when I burst in. "What is wrong?" he asked. He saw my face. I could not speak. I just held out my phone. He took it. He looked at the picture. He read the message. His face went completely blank. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. There was no anger, no shock, just a cold, absolute emptiness. "You are compromised," he said. "I'm targeted," I corrected him, my voice shaking. "You are done." He said it flatly. He reached for a drawer, for a checkbook. "I will pay you for your time. This is too dangerous. I am sending you home." "No." He stopped, his hand hovering over the drawer. "What did you say?" I said no. The fear was still there, but something else was rising up to meet it, anger. I am not quitting. Someone is scared of that melody. Someone does not want you to know what is in these letters. 2 days ago, I was just a translator. Now I am the only person in the world who knows the tune and the text. I am not running. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my heart. If that melody was strong enough to start a war, it is strong enough to stop one. I am staying. I am going to find out what it means. Luca stared at me. He looked at me like I was a completely new and fascinating species of animal, like I was a creature he could not possibly understand. "They photographed you," he said. His voice was low, deadly. "They know who you are. I will assign you a bodyguard." I shook my head. "No. A bodyguard makes me a target. A bodyguard makes me yours. It makes me a weakness." "Then what do you want, Ava?" he asked. "I want a contract." He paused. "A contract. I am not your property. I am not your girlfriend. I am your consultant. I want that number you offered. On paper. I want a guarantee that I am an employee, not a possession. I want the rules, and I want to get back to work. Now." A flicker of something respect, amusement, maybe both passed through Luca's eyes. He did not smile, he simply nodded. Once. He turned to his desk, picked up the phone, and spoke in a low, rapid Italian to his lawyer. He rattled off my terms, my name, the amount, the title consultant. I spent the next 3 days in that soundproof vault of an office, the world outside, the world of unpaid bills and singing for tips. It faded away. My world became Elena Vassilo. It became her letters, her photographs, her receipts. Luca had the entire leather box delivered. I was surrounded by the scent of old paper, faded perfume, and secrets. I did not work like a normal translator. I did not start with the first letter and end with the last. The dates were irrelevant. I am a musician. I look for the theme, the motif. I spread the letters out across the vast, polished table. I grouped them. "These," I told Luca on the second day, pointing to a small stack of pale blue letters. "These are the scherzos. They are light. They are about parties, about dresses. The rhythm in her writing is quick, playful." I pointed to another pile written on heavy cream paper. "These are the adagios. They are slow, sad. They are all about her visits to the cemetery. But look." He leaned in, his shoulder brushing mine. I tried to ignore the jolt of electricity. "The musical notations," I said, my voice quiet, "she uses them differently. In the happy letters, the staccato dots are like laughter. Here, they are like heartbeats, short, scared." I built a symphony of her life. I found the main theme, the melody she repeated. It was a sequence of notes, a rhythmic pattern that she hid in letters about gardening, in receipts for olive oil. It was a chorus. "This is the refrain," I said, my hands shaking as I isolated 5 letters. "This specific pattern, a dotted 8th note, a quarter rest, then a rapid triplet. She uses it here, 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 and here." Luca was silent. He walked to a file cabinet. He unlocked it. He pulled out a thick, old ledger. He opened it. His face was grim. "Tell me the dates on those letters," he said. I read them out. April 10th, 1992, August 1st, 1992, December 12th, 1992. I read the last two. He ran his finger down the page of the ledger. April 10th, a car bomb on Van Brunt Street. August 1st, my uncle's restaurant burned to the ground. December 12th, the first attempt on my father's life. My blood ran cold. She was marking the violence. This was not a diary. It was a war journal. This refrain. It was her signal for it. She was tracking the attacks. I was so deep in the past, I almost did not hear my phone vibrating. It was Maya. I had been ignoring her calls. I knew she would be furious. I stepped into the empty reception area, my voice a whisper. Maya, I cannot talk, Nye. Oh, you're going to talk. Ava, she snapped. Her voice was pure, unfiltered emergency room fury. Or you're going to listen. I know you took the job. You are a spectacular idiot. I hope the money is worth it. Maya, please. Shut up. I am not calling to lecture you. I am calling because I am an idiot, too. I had a patient tonight. Gunshot wound, came in about an hour ago. He was not one of yours. He was not Italian. He was speaking Spanish. Mexican dialect. I gripped the phone. What did he say? He was delirious, Maya said, her voice dropping lower. He was scared. He kept saying a name. Elena. Over and over, he said it in Spanish, and then he said something about a church, a safe house. He mentioned the singing nun's house in New Jersey. The phone felt slippery in my hand. The singing nun, Sister Lucia, the church where I learned the melody. I ran back into the office. We have to go. Now. Luca looked up, alarmed by the panic in my voice. Go where? To New Jersey, to the church where I learned the song. We did not take his black sedan. We took an old, unremarkable gray car from the parking garage. He drove. He did not ask questions until we were on the turnpike. I told him what Maya said, the cartel patient, the name Elena, the singing nun. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My mother, and a cartel. They were the cousins from the mountains. Luca, the Ndrangheta. Your mother was terrified of them. Maybe she was fighting them. The church was just as I remembered. Small, crumbling. It smelled like old wax and floor polish. Sister Lucia was in the sanctuary, polishing brass candlesticks, just like she had been 15 years ago. She was ancient now, her skin like tissue paper. She saw me first. Ava, my child. It has been so long. Then she saw Luca. He stepped out of the shadow of the doorway. She gasped. She dropped the candlestick. It clanged on the stone floor. She knew who he was. She crossed herself, her hand trembling. Sister, I said, my voice gentle, please, we need your help. The song you taught me, the Neapolitan melody. You said it was a field song. She was crying, silent tears rolling down her face. It was a prayer, she whispered, a prayer for protection. She asked me to teach it. She said it was insurance. She said to teach it to the children, in case she could not. Luca stepped forward. His voice was not threatening. It was soft, aching. Sister, who was she? Elena, she whispered. Your mother. She told us Elena Vassallo had hidden at the church for 3 weeks, nearly 30 years ago. She was running from someone. She was terrified. She did not trust her husband's men. She left something for safekeeping. She led us, not to the sanctuary, but to the old convent kitchen. It smelled like yeast and mice. She went to the old brick oven. She reached behind a loose stone. She pulled out a book. It was a small, leather-bound volume on the cover in gold script. It said, Elena's Recipes for a Good Life. Luca took it. He looked confused. Her recipes. This is what she left. I took it from his hands. I opened it. The handwriting was Elena's. Beautiful. Flowing. But it was not just recipes. My fingers trembled. Luca, look. I read from the page for Nona's Sunday gravy. 1 large can of tomatoes, 3 sharp notes of garlic, 1 onion diced, a 1/4 pound of beef held for a long rest, a handful of basil, a pinch of salt, and the secret. One staccato note of oregano. I looked up. My heart was pounding. It is not a recipe book. It is the code book, the key. We drove back to the city in silence. The recipe book was on my lap. It was the Rosetta Stone of Elena's life. Back in the office, the letters opened up. Flour meant money. Tomatoes meant guns. Basil was the Vassallo family. Oregano, that was the Calabrians, the 'Ndrangheta. The picture became horribly clear. Elena had discovered a shadow war. The 'Ndrangheta, the cousins she feared, were not just trying to move in. They were already there, and they had a partner. The cartel provides the sugar. I read from a letter. Sugar was not in the recipe book. Cocaine, Luca said. His voice was dead. They are partnering with a Mexican cartel. They are moving it through the Brooklyn ports, my ports. The door to the office opened. It was Rocco. He was Luca's oldest friend, his father's right-hand man, the one who had stayed loyal. He was like an uncle to Luca. He smiled when he saw me. It was a warm, protective smile. Ava, Luca, you two look like ghosts. You're working too hard, Rocco said, his voice booming. Ava, you are pale. Let me get you some coffee. Let me take these notes for you. I will have them scanned. Give your eyes a rest. He put his hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be comforting. It felt heavy. It felt like a cage. No, thank you, Rocco, I said, moving away from his touch. I have my own system. I do not want to break my concentration. His smile tightened, just a fraction. Of course, of course. Always the professional, Luca. You should let her rest. She is a singer, not an analyst. He left, closing the door softly. Luca frowned. He's right. He's just worried about me. He's worried about something, no, I said. I turned back to the recipe book. I found it, a complex sequence. It was not a recipe. It was a chord, a series of notes, ingredients, and rhythms. It is not a message, I whispered. It is a location. Look, Calabria. Container, councilman. I decoded the rest. It was a series of numbers. It is a container number. Pier 7, Brooklyn. Luca was on his feet. He made one call. He did not raise his voice. We are moving. Now. That night, the smell of the docks was salt, diesel, and dead fish. It was just Luca, Rocco, and two other men. Luca had ordered me to stay in the armored sedan. Lock the doors. Do not move. I watched from the safety of the car. They found the container. The number matched. Rocco pulled out bolt cutters. It was an ambush. Floodlights snapped on, blinding them. Gunfire erupted from the top of the containers. It was not one or two guns. It was a war. It was loud, chaotic. I screamed. One of Luca's men fell. Luca shoved Rocco behind a concrete barrier. He was firing back, moving with a deadly, calm efficiency. A bullet sparked off the metal container right next to his head. He grunted. He stumbled back, clutching his left shoulder. The ambushers pulled back, the sound of sirens. Luca's backup was screaming in the distance. I did not think. I unlocked the door and ran. Ava, get back in the car, Luca yelled. His face was white. I ignored him. I ran straight to him. Blood was pouring through his fingers. It was dark, almost black in the dim light. It is just a graze, he hissed, gritting his teeth. Rocco was frozen, staring at the blood. Put pressure on it, I yelled. I looked around, frantic. We were near a small, old-fashioned Italian restaurant that catered to the dock workers. There were tables outside, red and white checkered tablecloths. I ran to one, ripped the cloth from the table. I ran back to Luca. This is going to hurt. My voice was shaking, but my hands were not. I wrapped the thick cloth high on his arm. Above the wound, I made a tight knot. I looked on the ground, found a heavy, discarded piece of rebar. I shoved it under the knot and twisted. Luca cried out, man, a sharp, ragged breath of pain, but the bleeding slowed. I looked at my hands. They were covered in his blood. They were rock steady. My piano hands, my translator hands, they were not shaking at all. We were in the car, speeding away from the docks. The hard drive they had pulled from the container was on the seat between us. Rocco was driving, his hands shaking, talking too fast. I did not see them. Boss, it was a setup. It happened so fast. Luca was silent, his head back against the seat. His eyes were closed. His good hand was gripping the rebar in my tourniquet, holding it tight. We went to a private doctor in a high-rise. He stitched Luca up. Rocco left to handle the cleanup. After the doctor was gone, Luca and I were alone. He was drinking whiskey, his left arm in a sling. He looked exhausted. He looked at me. The anger was gone. "This ends now," he said. His voice was flat. "We got the drive." I said, "We found it." "They shot at me," he whispered. "They shot at me, and you were there. You are out, Ava. I am sending you away. Tonight, anywhere you want to go, I will pay you the full amount. You are done." He was pushing me out, back to my old life, back to safety. I should have said yes. I should have taken the money and run. I should have called Maya and told her I was safe. I shook my head. "I'm not leaving." I said, "This is not a game, Ava," he said, his voice rising. "This is real. You are a singer. You tied a tablecloth on my arm." "And I found the drive," I yelled back. "I read the code. I found the church. They are scared of her, and they are scared of me. I am not running." "Why?" he demanded. He stood up, wincing. He was in my space now. "Why are you staying in this? You have your money. Why?" I could smell the whiskey on his breath. I could feel the heat coming off him. "'Cause I came here for the truth," I said, my voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "I did not come here for you." It was a lie. My heart was a frantic, painful drum against my ribs. It was a lie, and he knew it, and I knew it. He did not move, and he just stared at me, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical weight. The lie hung in the air between us, heavy and fragile. He knew I was lying. He knew I was there for him, and he knew I would not admit it. "You are," he started to say, his voice low and rough. He was cut off by the door opening. Rocco entered. He was not shaking anymore. He looked calm, in control. He was the loyal second in command, the man who had been at Luca's right hand for 20 years. "Boss, the cleanup at the docks is handled," Rocco said. He nodded respectfully to me. "Miss Romano, you should be home. This is no place for you." He sat down at the edge of Luca's desk, casual, like he owned the place. The cartel men are animals. It was a setup, plain and simple. They were waiting for us. Good thing you are fast, Luca, and lucky. He was talking, but my ears were ringing. I was staring at Elena's recipe book, at my notes spread across the table. The refrain. The rhythmic pattern I had found in her letters, the one that marked every attack. Dotted eighth note, triplet, quarter rest. Rocco was drumming his fingers on the polished wood of the desk. He was nervous, trying to act calm. His fingers tapped, tap, 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 tap. Pause. My blood stopped. I looked at his hand. He did another little flourish, tap, 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 tap. Pause. It was not a nervous habit. It was a signature. It was the exact rhythm. It was the code. It was Elena's warning. He was not reporting on the war. He was the war. He was the traitor. He had been there all along. He was not protecting me. He was monitoring me. He was the leak. He was the one who told the gunman I was on the subway. He was the one who set up the ambush at the docks, an ambush meant to kill Luca. He saw my face. He saw my eyes go from his tapping fingers to the musical notation on my desk. His smile faltered. His eyes went cold. He knew that I knew. He reached inside his jacket. I opened my mouth to scream, "Luca!" The world exploded. The sound was deafening. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the vault office did not shatter. They imploded. A shockwave of glass and cold night air threw me backwards. Alarms screamed, gunfire, not from one gun, from everywhere, automatic, heavy, deafening. Luca did not hesitate. His reaction was inhumanly fast. He grabbed me with his good arm, pulling me behind his massive desk. "Enzo!" he roared into an intercom. One of his men, the mountain named Enzo, burst in, firing. "They are on every floor. Boss, it is a full assault." Luca looked at Rocco, who was already firing back, but not at the door. He was firing at Enzo. "Rocco, no," Luca roared. It was a sound of pure betrayal. Rocco sneered. "He should have died at the docks, boy, just like your mother." Luca shoved me toward a solid steel panel in the wall. "Panic room, go now." "I'm not leaving you," I screamed. Enzo grabbed me, and he was bleeding from his arm. "The boss gave an order, lady." He half threw me into the small, steel-walled room. The door hissed shut, sealing me in. The silence was absolute. I was in a steel box, safe. I could not hear the gunfire. I could not hear anything. It was a tomb. I hammered on the door. "Let me out!" There was a small screen on the wall, a bank of security monitors. My stomach dropped. I looked at the screen for the main office. It was a nightmare. 3 men in black tactical gear were in the room. Enzo was down. Rocco was directing them, pointing. "Find him." Luca was cornered, his back to the panic room door. He was firing with his right hand, his left arm useless in its sling. He was outnumbered. I watched, helpless. One of the gunmen flanked him. He fired. I saw Luca's leg buckle, and he went down. He did not cry out. He just fell. He was bleeding. He was bleeding out, right outside my door. My eyes scanned the panic room. I was safe. I was going to live, and he was going to die. I saw it, a small white metal box on a shelf, a first aid kit. I did not think. I grabbed the kit. I slammed my hand on the emergency override panel. A red light flashed. A computerized voice said, "Manual override engaged." The door hissed open. The sound hit me like a physical blow. It was chaos, gunfire, and men shouting in Calabrese. I ran out. I ran straight to Luca, and he was on the floor, trying to prop himself up, his face pale and slick with sweat. "I told you to stay," he gasped. "Shut up and live," I whispered. I dropped to my knees beside him. I ripped open the kit, gauze, tourniquets. The gunman turned. Rocco saw me. "Get her the girl, finish them both." One of the men raised his rifle. I saw it. On Luca's desk, the building-wide intercom system. The one he had used to call Enzo. The microphone was still on. I lunged for it. I slammed my hand on the all-call button. The man was taking aim. I did not scream. I opened my mouth and I sang. I sang the melody, the Neapolitan tune, Elena's song. My voice, amplified, echoed through the entire building, through the lobby, the hallways, the floors where the fighting was. It cut through the sound of the rifles. It was Elena's voice, coming from beyond the grave. The gunman, who was pointing his rifle at me, froze. He literally stopped, his finger on the trigger. He looked confused. He looked up at the ceiling, at the speaker. Rocco screamed at him, "Chife, shoot him, kill them." The man did not. He looked at his partner. His partner had also stopped. They were Calabrians. They were the Ndrangheta. They were the men Elena had written about. And that song was not just a truce, it was a command, a deep code, planted by Elena years ago, a signal of mercy, a signal for the old guard who had respected her, a signal that meant, stand down. It only lasted for a moment, maybe 30 seconds, but 30 seconds was enough. Luca's men were not Calabrians. They did not stop. They heard the pause in the gunfire. They heard the enemy hesitate. It was a flood. Enzo, who I thought was down, rose up. He was not dead. He led the charge. They stormed the office. The tide of the battle turned in an instant. The confused gunmen were overwhelmed. It was over. The office was destroyed. Smoke filled the air. Men were groaning. Rocco was on his knees. Enzo had a gun to his head. I was on the floor, my hands deep in Luca's leg, trying to stop the bleeding. He was fading. "Stay with me, Luca. Don't you dare close your eyes. Stay with me." Rocco looked at me. He spat blood on the floor. "Her music," he hissed. "That was her weakness. Your mother. She thought she could sign a peace treaty with a song. She was soft. She got what she deserved. Enzo cocked the hammer of his gun. He looked at Luca. "Boss, give the word." Luca was struggling to breathe. His face was gray, but his eyes were full of a cold, ancient rage. He looked at Rocco. The man who was his brother. He opened his mouth to give the order. No. My voice was a croak. Luca looked at me. He betrayed. "I know," I said. "Look at me, Luca. That song just saved your life. It was a signal for mercy. It saved you. If Elena's music was strong enough to save your life, let it be strong enough to save your soul." He stared at me when he was torn. The boss, trained in violence, and the son, listening to his mother's song. He closed his eyes. He took a ragged breath. "Exile," he whispered. Enzo looked confused. "Boss?" "Exile," Luca said, stronger. "He loses everything, his name, his money, his home. Put him on a cargo plane to a place with no name. If he ever sets foot on this continent again, I will kill him myself." He looked at Enzo. "And release the hard drive. Everything. The councilman, Rocco's offshore accounts, burn his whole world to the ground, the legal way." Later, after the private doctor had stitched Luca up for the second time, I sat by his bed in his apartment. The hard drive was on the table. The recipe book was in my lap. "Oh, there is one more," I said. My voice was hoarse. "No more," he murmured. He was weak from blood loss. "One more." I turned to the last page of the book. It was not a recipe. It was a full musical score. It was the melody, the complete tune, the part Sister Lucia never taught me. The song she taught me. It was just the first verse. I whispered, This is the coda, the ending. It is not just music. Luca, it is coordinates, a bank in Switzerland, a safe deposit box number." Elena had left him one final weapon. It was not just dirt on Rocco. It was leverage. It was proof that the cartel had been planning to double-cross the 'Ndrangheta from the very beginning. Elena had given Luca the one thing that could stop the war, the power to divide his enemies. The meeting was held 3 days later, a neutral restaurant, an old steakhouse in the city, closed to the public. It was just Luca, me, and Enzo. Across the table sat the new head of the Calabrian faction and 2 men from the cartel. The cartel man spoke Spanish. The Calabrian spoke his dialect. Luca spoke English. I sat next to him. I was not the singer. I was not the girlfriend. I was the translator. The Calabrian started, his voice a gravelly threat. "We want what we are owed. Rocco promised us the ports." I translated. Then I turned back to the Calabrian. I spoke in his own dialect. "Mister, Vassallo understands your claim, but he asks if your honor, allows you to be played for fools by the men sitting next to you." The Calabrian's eyes narrowed. The cartel man looked nervous. "What is she saying?" I did not let him finish. I slid Elena's evidence across the table. The cartel's plan to cut the 'Ndrangheta out. For an hour, I was not just translating. I was negotiating. I was framing. I used formal idioms of honor to trap the Calabrian. I used cold, hard logic on the cartel. I was a conductor, and this was my symphony. Finally, the deal was struck. First, the territory lines were redrawn. The Vassallo family kept the ports. Second, Vassallo Global Imports was going 100% legitimate. The Calabrians would get a small, clean percentage of the new logistics business. Then, I leaned forward. One last condition. They all looked at me. "The fentanyl," I said in English. Luca's eyes met mine. He nodded, backing me. "All cartel product. It stays out of New York schools. Period. No exceptions." The cartel man laughed. "The girl makes demands." Luca leaned forward. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of his entire organization. "The girl is my voice. That is not a request. It is the price of this peace. My family will enforce it. That is the new truce." The cartel boss stared at Luca. He stared at me. He nodded. "We have a deal." The city let out a collective breath. the gunfire at the Midtown Tower, the chaos at the docks, the sudden resignation of a powerful city councilman, it was all explained away. A violent internal dispute. The papers called it gas leak explosion. One ridiculous headline suggested the newspapers got the story, but they missed the plot. They smelled the smoke, but they could not find the fire. They reported on the collapse of Rocco's business empire, but they called it bad investments. A sudden financial catastrophe. The truth was buried under layers of legal jargon and sealed documents. The war was over, and almost no one in New York even knew it had begun. My contract was fulfilled. The money appeared in my bank account. It was a staggering, almost offensive number. It was enough to pay off my Nona's medical debt 10 times over. I sat at my small kitchen table in Queens and I made the final payment. I watched the balance go to zero. I did not cry. I just felt a mountain that had been sitting on my chest for 3 years finally dissolve. I could breathe. Luca was true to his word. He was not just a boss. He was a chief executive officer. He was restructuring. Vassallo Global Imports, once a convenient front for half of his operations, was now just that, imports. He closed the old valves, shutting down the dirty money streams that had fed his family for 2 generations. It was a seismic shift. It was brutal. He poured resources into legitimate logistics, into shipping, into commercial real estate. He established the Elena Vassallo Music Foundation, a scholarship fund for gifted musicians in the city's poorest neighborhoods. His mother's name was no longer a secret. It was on a letterhead. And me, I did not go back to Sal's. I did not go back to translating legal contracts for $50. I took a portion of my money, the clean, contractual money I had earned. I rented a bright, airy loft in Red Hook, a space with high ceilings and old wooden floors. I opened the Romano studio. It was a place for language and music, by day. I taught Italian and English to new immigrant children, the ones who were lost in the school system, by night. I taught music theory and composition. It was funded by the money from a Mafia boss, but it was the cleanest money in the city. The truce held, but it was not a fairy tale. It was not a permanent peace. It was an armistice, held together by mutual interest and constant surveillance. Maya became my unlikely partner. She was still an emergency room nurse. She was still my moral compass, and she still hated what Luca was. But she understood the new reality. She called me one night, not from her home, but from the hospital. Her voice was low and angry. "Ava, I have a 17-year-old girl in my emergency room," she said. She did not say hello. She overdosed. Fentanyl. It was cut with something new, something fast. It is not the usual supply. She said she got it near her high school. I hung up. I called Luca, and he was in a meeting. I did not care. I did not ask. I told him. The deal is being broken. A new fentanyl batch is in the high schools. He was silent for a moment. I heard the muffled sound of him speaking to someone else. "Excuse me," he said. Then his voice was clear. "I will handle it." The next day, the supply chain for that specific batch dried up. It vanished. The cartel was reminded of the agreement, the hard way. Our peace treaty was not a static document. It was an active, breathing thing that required maintenance. It required vigilance. Maya was my source on the ground. I was his. We were the monitoring system. I moved out of my Queens apartment. I found a new place, a small brownstone apartment in Brooklyn Heights, with a window that overlooked the water. It was quiet. It was mine. Luca did not give me a bodyguard. He respected my boundary. He did not send a black car to wait outside my door. But I was not naive. I knew the man who sold me coffee every morning, the one who always had a kind word, was one of his... I knew the quiet woman who walked her dog at the same time I left for the studio was watching my back. It was not a cage. It was a quiet, hidden perimeter. It was protection, not possession. I was learning how to be with him. It was not easy. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. He was a man who had been raised by violence. His instincts were forged in it. He spoke the language of force as his native tongue. And now, He was actively choosing to starve those instincts. He would come to my apartment late at night after 12 hours of brutal, legitimate negotiations with shipping unions and city regulators. He would be exhausted. The new war, the legal one, was harder than the old one. He would sit on my sofa, his bad shoulder aching, and just listen. I would play the piano for him, not the old songs, new ones, compositions I was working on. He was a man learning a new language, the language of peace, of spreadsheets, of legal compliance. I was learning to love the man who was trying, who was fighting his own nature, who was choosing this harder, quieter path every single day. Rocco was gone. He was exiled. Just as Luca had commanded, his assets were seized. The money, millions of dollars from offshore accounts, was laundered, but in reverse. It was cleaned and funneled into a new community fund for victims of organized crime. The same fund the disgraced councilman was now forced to champion. Rocco's name was erased. The cartel, having lost face and its foothold, pulled back to its own territory. The 'Ndrangheta accepted the safe loss of face. They preferred a small, clean profit from Luca's new logistics business to an unwinnable, unprofitable war. They took the deal. One cold Sunday in November, Luca took me to Staten Island. The cemetery was vast, gray and silent, overlooking the ocean. We walked to a simple, elegant headstone of white marble. Elena Vassallo, beloved mother. We stood there for a long time. The wind whipped my hair across my face. He did not speak. He just stared at the name etched in the stone. "She would have liked you," he said finally. His voice was quiet, rough with an emotion he rarely showed. I did not know what to say. I just reached for his hand. It was cold. I looked at the name. I thought of everything. The letters, the codes, the song. I opened my mouth. I sang. I did not just hum the melody. I sang the full song, the first verse, the one Sister Lucia had taught me, the second verse, the one of warning, and then the third verse, the coda I had found in the recipe book, the verse of peace. My voice was clear in the cold air. It was a prayer, a final report. As I sang the last phrase, I heard a sound next to me, a low vibration. Luca, his eyes were closed, his head was bowed, he was humming with me. His low, baritone rumble found my key. He was harmonizing. He was a little boy, standing at his mother's grave, humming the song she taught him. That night, back at his apartment, he opened his safe. He pulled out the old leather box. It was almost empty. The letters were all organized. The recipe book was on top. "This is yours," he said. "She left it for you." Tucked into the cover of the recipe book was one last envelope. It was sealed. On the front, in Elena's beautiful script, it said, "To the one who sings the third verse." My hands trembled. I broke the seal. It was a single sheet of paper. "To my unknown friend," it read. "If you are reading this, the truce was broken and it has been healed. You have found the key. You have sung the coda. Many will think strength is the power to pull the trigger, to start the war, but you know the truth." I read the last line aloud. My voice was a whisper. True power is knowing the right moment to stop the shot. I looked at Luca. He was watching me, his eyes full of a new, quiet peace. I went home to my apartment in Brooklyn. I did not put the box on my bookshelf. I had my own small safe installed in the closet. I placed the leather box inside. I put the letters, the photographs, and the recipe book inside. I closed the heavy steel door. I spun the dial. The past was not a ghost anymore. It was not a prison. It was not a mountain of debt or a stack of threatening letters. It was a score. It was the music I had learned to play. And now, I was the one conducting it. The windows were open. I could hear the sound of the subway rumbling over the bridge, a steady, predictable rhythm. We had the party 6 months later. It was not a grand affair. There were no newspaper announcements. There was no ballroom. We held it in the small, walled backyard of my Brooklyn brownstone. String lights were hung from the trees. Maya was there. arguing happily with Enzo about the best way to grill sausages. My nonna sat in a comfortable chair, wrapped in a blanket, holding court and accepting compliments on the main dish. I had spent 2 days in my kitchen, not just cooking, but deciphering. I made my grandmother's eggplant parmigiana, but I used the recipe from Elena's book, the one that was a code, 3 sharp notes of garlic for the 'ndrangheta, a 1/4 pound of beef held for a long rest for the old piece. It was not just food, it was a circle, closed with the smell of basil and slow-cooked tomatoes. It was the scent of my childhood in Queens, and the scent of Elena's hidden war, finally combined into a single, peaceful aroma. Luca stood beside me. He was not wearing a tuxedo. He was in a simple, dark suit that fit him perfectly. He looked relaxed. He looked happy. The lines of stress that had been carved into his face were softer. He was smiling. He was laughing at something Enzo said. He was a man, not a boss. After dinner, I brought out my keyboard. My friends, my students from the studio, and Luca's most trusted men, his new family, they all gathered. They expected a song. I looked at Luca. He knew what was coming. I did not sing a jazz standard. I did not sing a ballad. I sang the coda, the 3rd verse of Elena's melody, the one that held the coordinates to the Swiss bank, the one that had been her final weapon. To our guests, it was just a beautiful, ancient-sounding Italian melody, a piece of decoration. They clapped politely. But Luca knew. He was watching me, his eyes dark and intent. He knew what the song meant. It was not a celebration of our victory. It was a final, quiet command. The Swiss account had been dealt with. The last of the dirty money, the final thread of the old network, had been cut, cleaned, and rerouted into the foundation. This song was the signal. It was the sound of the very last door being closed and locked. It was the end. A few days later, I received a letter. It was on thin, onion skin paper from the convent in New Jersey. Sister Lucia, she had heard about the engagement. She had heard about the Elena Vassallo Music Foundation. She wanted to confess something. I drove out to the church. She was in the garden, pruning roses. "Ava," she said, her old hands trembling as she held mine, "I have not told you the complete truth." She told me that Elena, all those years ago, had not just asked her to teach the song to any child. Elena had been specific. She had given Sister Lucia a small fund. She wanted the song taught to a few specific children, orphans, from good Italian families who had been ruined by the violence, children who were smart, resilient, and musical. "She called you her peace carriers," Sister Lucia whispered, her eyes filling with tears. She did not know if she would live. She wanted to plant seeds. She was scattering her melody into the world, praying that one day, one of those seeds would find her son, that one of you would be in the right place at the right time to sing the song when he needed to hear it. I felt the world shift. My entire life, my nonna volunteering at that specific church, me, learning that specific rare tune, me, walking into Sal's club that rainy night, me, humming that tune to calm my own heart. It was not chance. It was not an accident. It was a 30-year-old plan, set in motion by a brilliant, desperate mother. I drove back to the city. I found Luca on the roof of his building, overlooking the skyline. I told him. He was silent. He just stared at the city as the lights began to turn on. I thought he would be angry, that he would feel manipulated. Then he turned to me. He was stunned. He looked at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. And then, he did something I had never seen him do. He threw his head back and he laughed. It was not a smile. It was a deep, genuine laugh of pure astonishment. "My mother," he said, shaking his head, "she was a conductor. She was writing the score, and we were all just playing our parts." He pulled me close, his good arm wrapping around me. "She connected us. She connected us before we even knew each other's names." Our new life was not without its old ghosts. The disgraced councilman, facing federal charges, made a public, grand gesture. He offered to become the primary sponsor for the community fund that Rocco's money had started. He wanted to atone, he said to the newspapers. He met with me at my studio. He expected me to be grateful. A wonderful gesture when I said, my voice polite, cold, the fund accepts, but on one condition. He smiled, a politician's smile, anything. A full, public, external audit every year, every donation, every dollar spent, posted online for the entire community to see. His smile froze. He began to sweat. He was a man who lived in shadows, and I was demanding a spotlight. He looked at me, then at the door, as if he expected Luca to be standing there. He was alone with me. Yes, he said, his voice a dry rasp. Of course. Transparency. He nodded, but he was shaking. I did not go back to singing at Sal's, but I did not stop singing. I signed a contract for a small tour, just 6 weeks. Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., a series of upscale lounges and clubs. And I did not go alone. I brought 2 of my best students from the Romano studio. They were not my roadies, they were my team, by day. We held free translation workshops for immigrant families in each city. By night, they helped me manage my set, and sometimes they even performed with me. My music was not just an escape anymore. It was infrastructure. It was a tool. On my last night in New York before the tour, Luca and I stood on the promenade. We looked out over the river at the Brooklyn Bridge, its lights like a diamond necklace strung across the dark. The air was cold, smelling of the river and pretzels. Are you scared? He asked. Going on the road? No, I said. I leaned my head on his shoulder, his bad one. It was strong again. It is not a war anymore. It is just music. I watched the cars move across the bridge, silent and steady. A ceasefire is not surrender. Luca, I whispered, I learned that from your mother. It is not weakness, it is the rest note. It is the pause in the music that lets you breathe, so you can play the next part, the more beautiful part. He was quiet for a long time. He put his arm around me, pulling me in against the cold. And if the music stops, he asked, his voice a low rumble in my ear. I looked up at him, at this man who was raised in violence, who had chosen peace, the man who had been taught to be a king, but had learned to be a partner. If the music stops, and Luca said, his eyes meeting mine, then we will be the ones to write the next phrase. I smiled. I lifted my hand and tapped a rhythm against his chest. Tap, 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 tap. Pause. And I will keep the beat. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know what you think. So please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And for extra support, hit that hype button. It really helps the channel, and it allows this story to be heard by so many more people.